The Kingdom of Galuh emerged during a pivotal shift in early Sundanese history. Around the early 7th century CE, the mighty Tarumanagara Kingdom, a Hindu-Buddhist kingdom based in West Java, began to experience fragmentation. As central control weakened, several regional powers grew more autonomous, setting the stage for new political formations. It was in this context that a noble named Prabu Wretikandayun laid the foundation for what would become Galuh, one of the most influential early Sundanese kingdoms. Prabu Wretikandayun, a nobleman with profound spiritual and political insight, married a daughter of Prabu Suryawarman, one of Tarumanagara's final rulers. This marriage gave him the legitimacy to establish a realm of his own while maintaining ancestral ties to the older kingdom. Around 612 CE, with Tarumanagara in decline, Wretikandayun declared the formation of Galuh, a new kingdom that would prioritize Sundanese culture, spiritual harmony, and justice-based leadership. The name Galuh itself is symbolic. In Old Sundanese, Galuh means jewel or precious stone, representing the purity and spiritual brilliance of the kingdom. It wasn't simply a breakaway state. It was a reimagining of kingship in Sundanese terms, closer to nature, balanced with local values, and built on the concept of dharma, cosmic righteousness. Wretikandayun's capital was likely situated near present-day Siamis, a region rich in agriculture and surrounded by sacred geography such as Mount Sawal and the Sitandui River. Rather than conquer, Wretikandayun chose to establish Galuh through diplomacy, lineage, and sacred legitimacy. This peaceful birth set a tone for Galuh's early existence. It would be a kingdom focused on spiritual authority, cultural preservation, and equitable governance. Over the centuries, this kingdom would become one of the cultural bedrocks of the Sundanese people. Prabu Wretikandayun was more than just a political founder. He was regarded as a spiritual sage, a king who combined wisdom with mystical insight. He was likely born into a noble family with spiritual inclinations, and his name carries deep meaning. Wretikandayun can be interpreted as one who upholds sacred principles with inner clarity. He was deeply influenced by Hindu-Buddhist teachings, but he was also grounded in local Sundanese spirituality that emphasized balance between humans, ancestors, and nature. As ruler, Wretikandayun led Galuh with a rare combination of moral authority, administrative skill, and spiritual charisma. He gathered loyal nobles, scholars, and religious leaders to advise him, creating a court culture where learning and ethics guided decision-making. Under his leadership, Galuh began codifying laws that blended Hindu Dharma Shastra with Adat, customary law, ensuring that justice was delivered with both sacred and communal consideration. Wretikandayun was said to possess Kesaktian, supernatural energy or divine favor, which was reflected in his mastery of Pusaka, sacred heirlooms, control over natural elements, and ability to perform spiritual rites. His reign saw the commissioning of sacred sites, meditation gardens, and possibly early temples or sanctuaries used by both Brahmin priests and local hermits. The king's inner court became a center for spiritual and political education, where future leaders were trained to govern with wisdom and humility. By the end of his reign, Wretikandayun chose not to cling to power, but to retreat into spiritual seclusion, a practice known as moksha or sannyasa in Indian tradition. He handed over the throne to his son, Rahiang Mandaminyak, and departed for a quiet life in the mountains. His withdrawal elevated his image from ruler to saint ancestor, and in later generations, he was venerated not just as the founder of Galuh, but as a divine protector of the land and its people. The Kingdom of Galuh developed a sophisticated administrative and social structure under Wretikandayun and his successors. Although the king held ultimate authority, the governance system was built on consultation and communal balance. A council of royal advisors, known as Para Rahyang, assisted in maintaining law, managing territories, and resolving inter-regional disputes. These advisors included nobles, Brahmin scholars, and spiritual elders who helped shape a uniquely Sundanese form of governance. Galuh was divided into mandalas or territorial units, each governed by a noble loyal to the king. These regions were granted a certain degree of autonomy, provided they followed the central codes of law and offered tribute to the capital. This decentralized structure allowed local traditions to flourish while keeping a unified identity under the Galuh banner. It also minimized the need for warfare or harsh suppression, setting Galuh apart from more militarized kingdoms of its time. Justice was central to Galuh's political philosophy. Laws were informed by both imported Hindu-Buddhist scriptures and local wisdom traditions. The concepts of karma, dharma, and ancestral reverence were embedded into legal judgments. Courts often met in sacred groves or near rivers, believed to bring clarity and divine guidance to human disputes. Punishments were designed not just to penalize but to restore harmony, often involving ritual purification or offerings to the ancestors. Education, too, was valued in the kingdom. Children of nobles and scholars were trained in ethics, martial arts, religious texts, and Sundanese history. This helped build a literate, spiritually aware leadership class that would carry the values of Galuh across generations. The governance model of Galuh became a prototype for later Sundanese kingdoms, emphasizing integrity, spiritual duty, and communal welfare. Spirituality was at the heart of Galuh's identity. While the kingdom acknowledged the authority of Hinduism and Buddhism, it wove these traditions together with indigenous Sundanese beliefs to create a syncretic spiritual culture. Mountains, rivers, forests, and stones were considered sacred, and rituals were often conducted to honor spirits of the land, Karuhun, as well as Hindu deities. Temples were simple but spiritually potent, often located near natural sanctuaries. The kings of Galuh were seen not just as political leaders, but as divinely chosen guardians of balance between heaven, earth, and humanity. It was believed that the king's moral behavior directly influenced the kingdom's harmony. This belief made spiritual discipline, through fasting, meditation, and offerings, an essential duty of the king and his household. Heirlooms or pusaka, such as ancient crises, scrolls, or sacred spears, were treated as living embodiments of ancestral power. Cultural expression thrived under this spiritual atmosphere. Oral storytelling, traditional songs, wayang performances, and ritual dances flourished as tools to transmit history and cosmic values. Many of these performances revolved around legendary rulers, mythical ancestors, and moral dilemmas. The language of the court became more refined, with traces of Sanskrit entering the old Sundanese vocabulary, enriching both literature and royal communication. Festivals and ceremonies reinforced unity and spiritual connection. Seasonal rituals honoring ancestors, rice goddess Dewi Shri, and local spirits were integrated with Hindu-Buddhist observances like Nyepi, Day of Silence, or Waisak. This blend of beliefs fostered a unique Sundanese spiritual identity that has lasted into modern times, one that values inward reflection, harmony with nature, and deep ancestral reverence. Under the guidance of Prabu Wretikandayun and his successors, Galuh experienced significant growth and prosperity throughout the 7th and 8th centuries. The kingdom thrived due to its strategic position in Sundanese heartlands, located near fertile plains, rivers, and mountains, which provided an abundance of resources. Galuh's agricultural output, particularly rice, was among the highest in the region, and it also became known for producing high-quality textiles, crafts, and trade goods. Trade was another pillar of Galuh's prosperity. The kingdom maintained strong trade routes with coastal kingdoms like Sunda and Banten, exchanging inland products such as spices, textiles, and forest resources for items like salt, metals, and luxury goods. This economic network linked Galuh to broader Southeast Asian maritime trade routes, enhancing the kingdom's wealth and influence. The capital of Galuh, likely near Siamis, served as a hub for merchants, artisans, and spiritual leaders. Culturally, Galuh was a center for education and intellectual exchange. The royal court hosted scholars from different regions, including India and Southeast Asia, who brought with them knowledge of religion, astronomy, medicine, and governance. These exchanges enriched the kingdom's cultural and intellectual landscape, helping to preserve and adapt Hindu-Buddhist traditions while also promoting indigenous Sundanese culture. Galuh's internal harmony, economic growth, and flourishing arts made it one of the most prosperous kingdoms of early West Java. However, despite its success, the kingdom's relative isolation compared to coastal powers like Srivijaya or the Sunda Kingdom would later present challenges, particularly as political consolidation began to take place across Java. The dynastic succession in Galuh was marked by continuity, with each ruler maintaining the values established by Prabu Wretikandayun. Upon his passing, his son Rahyang Mandiminyak inherited the throne and continued the kingdom's prosperous reign. Mandiminyak was known for his strong leadership and dedication to the kingdom's spiritual and political ideals. He upheld the cultural practices and laws that made Galuh a respected power, ensuring its stability in the years following his father's rule. As Galuh entered its 2nd century, the royal family grew increasingly influential, not just within the kingdom, but across the larger Sundanese and Javanese landscape. Prabu Sena, another notable ruler, was instrumental in expanding Galuh's influence beyond its original boundaries. Though lesser known than the later kings of the Sunda-Galuh Kingdom, these early kings were revered as paragons of justice, wisdom, and strength. The royal bloodline, with its sacred status, acted as a moral compass for the people, maintaining harmony and guiding the kingdom's moral fabric. Tensions, however, did arise over succession. Galuh was not immune to the power struggles that characterized the politics of the region. The struggle for the throne, especially in later generations, occasionally led to conflicts between rival factions within the royal family. Yet these issues were often resolved peacefully, in keeping with the kingdom's emphasis on balance and fairness. These dynastic struggles were not only political but often involved spiritual claims to the throne, where legitimacy was tied to ancestral favor and divine approval. By the time the kingdom's third generation of rulers came to power, Galuh had already made significant political and cultural impacts across Sunda and Java. The royal line carried a dual legacy, both as divine rulers and cultural custodians of the Sundanese people. Their leadership style would be carried forward, influencing both the kingdom's eventual merger with Sunda and its broader role in Javanese history. By the end of the 9th century, Galuh and the Sunda Kingdom, its western neighbor, began to merge. The process was not a violent conquest but a strategic union through marriage, diplomacy, and shared cultural identity. One of the most significant moments of this merger came during the reign of Prabu Wretikandayun, when a marriage alliance between the royal families of Sunda and Galuh unified both realms under a single crown. This union created a kingdom that would be known as the Sunda-Galuh Kingdom, with Pakuan Pajajaran as the capital. The merger marked a shift from two separate kingdoms to a larger, more centralized power. The cultural, economic, and spiritual ties between Galuh and Sunda had long been strong, and this union allowed for a more integrated approach to governance, while also preserving the core cultural and spiritual practices of both kingdoms. While the leaders of Sunda had largely controlled coastal regions, Galuh's influence in the interior and its deep ties to Sundanese spiritual traditions added strength to the larger kingdom. The Sunda-Galuh Kingdom became a dominant power in the western part of Java for several centuries. It played an essential role in shaping the cultural and political landscape of the region, providing a stable foundation for the Pajajaran dynasty. However, with the passage of time, the distinct identity of Galuh gradually faded into the broader Sundanese identity, though its legacy persisted through cultural practices, legal systems, and spiritual beliefs that lived on long after the political unity was formed. The union between Sunda and Galuh eventually set the stage for the rise of Pakuan Pajajaran as the central authority in western Java, which would continue to influence the region until the 16th century, when the kingdom fell due to the expansion of Islamic states and European colonial influence. The Kingdom of Galuh's legacy is still very much alive in modern-day Siamis, Tasikmalaya, and other parts of West Java. The name Galuh continues to resonate with locals as a symbol of cultural pride, and it is often invoked in discussions about Sundanese identity. Many of the traditions established during Galuh's reign, particularly those relating to agriculture, spiritual practices, and communal governance, are still part of the fabric of Sundanese culture today. Modern scholars and historians have long studied Galuh's influence on the development of Sundanese culture and Javanese history. From the Galuh Museum in Siamis to local oral traditions and rituals, the memory of Galuh's spiritual and political contributions endures. The ancient temples, royal tombs, and historical sites scattered across the region are poignant reminders of the kingdom's rich history. In Sunda itself, the amalgamation of Galuh's spiritual legacy and the secular statecraft of Pajajaran has created a hybrid identity that lives on through the arts, music, and literature of modern-day Sundanese society. Traditional dance, wayang golek, and Sundanese poetry still draw inspiration from the epic narratives and royal traditions that flourished during the Galuh period. Ultimately, the Kingdom of Galuh, though long subsumed into the larger Sunda-Galuh Kingdom, represents the enduring power of regional sovereignty, cultural preservation, and the spiritual resilience of the Sundanese people, principles that continue to shape West Java's identity in the present day.